Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This meeting will serve as our City Council meeting and our Housing Authority meeting of July 7th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask our Assistant City Clerk to call the roll.
Vice Mayor Haddishelt.
Here.
Councilmember Alvord.
Here.
Councilmember Ricucci.
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Here.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Here, thank you. I'd like to ask our Police Chief, Troy Bergstrom, if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just a note for this evening, the screen behind us is not working. There's a technical issue, a signal issue. We have somebody coming out for it. Those that are at home will be able to follow along because that has not been interrupted. But there are extra presentation materials on the desk if you need to pick anything up. So just want to let you know why that screen's dark. I'd like to ask our Assistant City Clerk if she would please read the procedures for addressing the City Council.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. If you've not already picked up an agenda, they are available over there at the end of the staff table. If you're here to speak to an issue not on the agenda, you may do so under public comment with a 3-minute time limit. As a reminder, the Brown Act does not allow the City Council to take action on issues that are not listed on the agenda. If you wish to speak to an item appearing on the agenda, you must stay within a 5-minute time limit. Members in attendance may address the City Council at the podium. And there's also a call-in option where comments can be made by calling phone number 916-774-5353. Speaker time limits will be monitored. When the light blinks red, you'll be asked to conclude your comments. And if you do address council tonight, we would appreciate your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will open up public comment. Is there anyone tonight that would like to address the council on any item that's not on the agenda? We'll take those that are here first, and then we'll do phone calls next. And I believe we have a couple yellow cards. So I will start with Paul Kamitsky. Do you want to come forward?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The first time I talked to you, about a month ago, I told you that the people who are homeless in Placer County, or 90% of them are addicted and mentally ill. They're not going away. We have a very large chronically homeless population here, which means people who have been here from 4 to 6 years. The next time, what I mean by that is they've been on the streets that long. I talked to you, I told you, don't count on the city, on the Placer County government to do anything for you. They haven't done anything in the past. They did the Marbut study in 2014 and then just sat on it and never did anything. Now they're doing another study. I don't think they're going to do much to help Roseville. This is something that the city council needs to address. What I'm going to do tonight is with the handouts I brought, and I brought extra copies. I'm going to introduce this young man here. His name is Ike Bischoff, and he's my colleague, and he represents the finest of Roseville. He graduated from Roseville High with a 4.0 graduate average, and he has tutored many of the students there. He shares his largesse with his academic skills. He produced a musical while he was there that the students put on. And so if you want a job done, you find a nerd. And Ike is my perfect nerd. And I told Ike I wanted him to figure out how many homeless people there will be in Roseville next year. And he's ready to do that. Come on up, Mike.
Hello. Did you want me to hand these out?
Just talk about it, yeah.
Well,
They already have it.
oh, you already have it. Okay. Hi. So my name is Ike Bischoff, and I just wanted to briefly explain how I collected the data that you have on your handout. So the graph on the top shows the data for all of Placer County, and it shows the data points for how many chronically homeless and how many total homeless people there are in different years. And that data comes from the point-in-time count for different years. Now, a point-in-time count was not done in 2021. It was not able to be done. So to estimate how many chronically homeless and total homeless people there are, I plotted the trend line of the data. You can see the blue line and the orange line are the trend lines for how many homeless there are. And if we extend the trend line into 2021 and 2022, then we get estimates for how many homeless people, chronically homeless and total homeless there are. Now, that's for all of Placer County. And in one of the questions on the Marbit reports, homeless people were asked, where do you sleep at night? And 50% of respondents who answered that question said that they sleep in Roseville. So to estimate these data points for Roseville, you see the graph on the bottom here is the same set of data, but all of the values have been cut in half. So that's how I estimated how many chronically homeless and total homeless there are in Placer County, in Roseville specifically. Thank you.
How many will it be next year?
Oh, those data points, yeah, for next year, that data is also on the graph as well for 2022.
And how many will it be?
Well, for 2022, for Roseville, we expect 235 chronically homeless, 374 total homeless, and then for all of Placer County, we would expect 470 chronically homeless and then 748 total homeless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This problem is not going to go away on its own. We need to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have okay, both of you came together, Ike and Paul. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to address the council on any item not on the agenda? Okay, and I like it. We have a sign over there. We have no calls. Okay, so I will close public comment this evening, and I'll ask the clerk to announce procedures for the consent calendar, please.
All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be passed by one motion. There will be no discussion of consent calendar items unless a member of the City Council, staff, or the public requests a specific item be removed. At this time, I don't have any items.
Okay, is there anyone from the audience or any phone calls of anyone to remove anything from the consent calendar? Okay, I'm seeing none.
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haddishelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you. All right, the next item before us is item 7.1, Roseville Police Department body worn and dash cameras master equipment agreement.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and Council. I'm Troy Bergstrom, your Chief of Police, and I'm here tonight to give you an overview of the Police Department's proposed contract for outfitting all of our officers with body cameras. Normally, a contract for services like this would just go through on the consent calendar like you just went through, but since we've talked about body cameras previously here, I thought it'd be important to give you an overview of the whole program to go along with asking you to approve a contract. The benefits of a body-worn camera system and why should we outfit our officers with body cameras. First is they help provide context and capture information during investigations and contacts by our officers to bolster those investigations and the interviews they conduct in the field. They provide a layer of transparency regarding officer contacts and actions, and the recordings of these investigations and contacts can be used to help present any criminal cases they have in court. I think one of the things that's often talked about when agencies add body cameras is they help build trust within the community. In our police department, we build trust with our community through how we interact with them every day. We build trust through recruiting high-quality job candidates, by having high training standards, and through sound policy and supervision. We build trust by treating people with dignity and respect, and by providing great resources to our neighbors and community members. While body cameras will be a great piece of equipment to provide and add to our officers, we will continue to build trust with our community the way we always have. As far as specifics related to the contract before you tonight, we began a trial and testing process in May using the LensLock body camera system. I know the contract on there mentions both body cameras and dash cameras. At this point, we're aiming towards body cameras first. and then looking at dash cameras into the future, just because there's significant cost differences, and we felt body cameras would be the first best step to take. So we began a trial and testing process in May using the LensLock body camera system. We are currently testing LensLock services as part of our overall digital evidence storage. So anytime we bring in digital evidence, the officer takes a picture with their cell phone for evidence, things like that. We're working with LensLock to build the storage capacity for all that kind of digital evidence. And so really when we talk about body cam evidence, it's the same thing. It's digital files. And since we were already using their system on one side, we began looking at their system for the body cameras as well. In addition, one of our neighboring agencies uses the LensLock body camera system, and they've reported great results. And so it seemed like a good fit for our testing. Through this testing process, a group of officers from across several units in our department was selected for field testing. This testing included the general use of the equipment in the field, the download processes, and the use of the system to review footage. LensLock passed all of our parameters for field deployment. In fact, the system was so well received that at the end of the trial period, at the end of May, we had to give the cameras back, and the officers we had assigned the cameras didn't want to give them back, but we had to because they didn't belong to us just yet. Normally there'd be a picture up there of some examples of a couple of screenshots, and they're in the presentation before you, just to show you the quality of the camera. One of them is the camera in daytime, and one of the cameras at night. I will tell you that those are just screenshots I took off my computer when I was looking at the review system. That does not do justice for how clear this system is. It is a very clear system. The system also has the capability to do night vision. However, we're not going to have that added in because our officers don't have night vision with their own eyes, and we want the cameras to really reflect what they can see. As part of this as well is the policy considerations. Our body cam policy is developed as all of our other policies are with our contracted policy provider, Lexipol. In this case, they provided us the base policy for body cameras, and then we expanded on that with things that are more specific to our agency. It's a very thorough policy. It's actually 10 pages in length and includes policy on how to use and wear the system, when they should record, when they should stop recording, how to stop recording, the responsibilities of our supervisors, the parameters for when and how to release footage to the public, the retention periods for the data, and even our audit procedures. The next slide would have been another screenshot for everyone to look at, and would be a picture of our video database. As part of this process, I actually also had a login to the system. It's a very robust database system that we can go in. All you have to have is the passwords and a web address, and you can log into it and you can review any of the video footage on there. So as soon as it's downloaded, if there was a piece of video I wanted to look at, all I need is the internet and my password, and I can look at it. It's very easy to flow through looking at the videos. The system, even our test trial, has a lot of videos in there. It's very easy to move through and use, very easy to be able to move videos from one side to the other. And when you combine the review system with the cameras in the field, LensLock passed everything that we need to meet our needs. What's before you tonight is the contract with LensLock, and so let's talk about what those costs look like. The contract is a 5-year term for a total of $753,402. And as you know, body cameras, we've tried this a couple times in the past, and the thing that was the stumbling block was always money. That's a lot of money to come ask for. The benefit of this particular contract with LensLock is that they allow us to spread this cost out over the whole 5 years of the contract. So each year for us will be $150,680, which is far more manageable to get into our budget than $750,000. And the big piece with this is the cameras themselves are not expensive. It's the data storage. So you can imagine the amount of data that goes into video is very large, and that's where most of these costs are. This contract allows us unlimited data storage, which is good because you don't want to have a cap and then you go over that cap and it gets really expensive. Imagine your cell phone bill if you go past the limits you have and magnify that by a lot. The first year of this contract is being funded through the Supplemental Law Enforcement Fund, and then the following 4 years of it will be worked into the police department's budget as you get our budget requests each year. And then outside of this contract, but also some first-year costs, we have included $20,000 in this first year. These are for those unforeseen costs that we just don't know. We haven't done this, so we don't know, if we're going to run into needing something else to go with it. And those funds were included in our budget this year. And then the last piece of the puzzle is people. We've discovered in talking to other agencies that implement body camera programs, if you don't have somebody that can manage all of this video, that you're going to fail when you begin your program. And so in our budget that you recently passed, it included a new property and evidence clerk, and their job will be to manage all of the video evidence that comes with the body camera program. The implementation timeline, we're already in that timeline, and that we began our trial testing back in May and we completed it. We're in the purchasing process now, which begins here with you tonight. And then once that happens, we'll begin actually buying the camera systems, and we'll move into our training period on both how to use the equipment and, more importantly, our policy, when you're supposed to do things. We'll do that in the month of August. We're estimating by the time everything comes in, it'll be August and September as we're installing everything and getting it ready to go, and then having it being operational in the field, hopefully in September, but it might take us into October as well. So with that, my recommendation tonight is to ask you to award the contract for body-worn camera services for our police department to LensLock and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement with LensLock. And with that, I'm open for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Council, are there any questions of the chief? Let's start with, or we'll work down this way. Councilmember Okichi?
I think, Chief, I had one of my questions answered kind of previously. I wasn't sure that if I was an officer and I had it on, that I had to take it off. But what I understand, it continuously plays, right? Except when you shut it off if you were, doing something.
So correct. They have a large button. It's about the size of a quarter that's right in the center of the camera. And so when they want to turn it on, they just push it once. When they want to turn it off, they push it twice, almost like when you push a mouse on a computer, and it shuts it off.
So it's not something you have to turn it in. It's like it's a computer. It just goes onto the main line someplace.
Yes. So when they end their shifts, what they do is they go back to the police station, and they look like little mini ATM machines. And we'll have, right now we have 2 of them, but we'll end up with several of them. And they just plug them into the system, and it downloads all the video onto the server, and it also charges the batteries and things for them. So by the end of their day, when they're getting ready to go home, they just plug it in, leave it, come back tomorrow. All the videos have been cleared off and dropped onto the server, and they have a body camera battery that's ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, I just had a question on the cost page that was up. I saw, and you referenced it, the $20,000 for unforeseen, and then I saw a couple other line items broke out, which is pretty robust. It looked like they covered a lot of things as far as the upgrade after, I think it was 24 months or whatever it was on there. Thank you for bringing that back up. So, yeah, after 20 months, upgrade of all equipment. So my question is, in the field, if something happens to one of these, I don't see it broke out here, is the replacement cost factored into one of these 5 bullets, or are we on the hook for that? And if that's the case, what's the replacement cost of a camera?
So we just give it back to them, and they give us another one.
So that's just part of the
camera
contract?
costs themselves are very, very minimal.
Okay.
It's the storage that's what the bulk of the cost is.
Right. I was just curious because I didn't see that broke out. So as part of the contract, that replacement cost is built in? Okay. Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Haldeshot?
Chief, I could have read right past it. How many of these body-worn cameras does each officer get their own?
Everyone gets their own. So we have 144 officers from me all the way down to the newest officer, and every officer, including myself, will have one.
Okay, so that'll be their personal body-worn camera assigned to them. Great. And then my recollection, evidently body-worn camera has gotten competitive because do I remember correctly a few years ago this being like a $2 million number?
Yes, so the costs, and a lot of it, again, has to do with storage. And so when you have more people in the market, the storage costs come down, and storage just gets cheaper over years anyways. I think companies have figured out that police departments can't come in and hand over $2 million for a program like this. And so they figured out how to get costs to be more competitive so that departments can't afford it.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Alvord?
Got a series of questions. First 2 are financial. This has an interest rate of 2.9%, and it had listed monthly, quarterly, or annually in the same interest rate. Is there a penalty for paying it off early?
That I don't know.
And along with the question, I'll look back at our financial guy back there, is it a benefit to borrow internally to pay it off right away if there's no penalty, as opposed to paying their interest rate? Just thought I would ask or suggest, possibly. Okay, we'll comment.
We can talk about that after and we can figure it out.
Councilman Albrecht, I can take that one also. So when we looked at it, right, this is kind of implementation. We're phasing. And so as we grow, the program's going to grow and going to change. And so the thought process behind it was we certainly could afford the full load. But taking the incremental costs as we go forward, we see the benefit of being able to evolve the program as well without being locked into that long-term program. So it makes sense to go a little slower. Certainly, interest is always going to be a little bit more, but we felt that the additional interest, the minimal additional interest in this case, was outweighed by the benefit to be able to evolve the program.
And then it had, there was a clause in there about they give you all brand new cameras. I can't remember the exact, it was like 30 months into it. 20 months into it. And then every 20 months, I think it was. But the last one was like right at the very end of the contract, which was odd.
My assumption is when they hand you brand new stuff near the end of the contract, it's because they were really hoping you're about to get a new contract.
I was kind of wondering, I was looking at that going, that's interesting. And then the other thing I was wondering, could you, or any idea on state grants? Because I know we were originally hoping that there would be some funding for this. Is there any potential out there for the future to help us with this?
So most of the things that we've looked at, there's a lot of things that talk about whether state or federally they mandate body camera programs, and it's kind of gone back and forth. We haven't seen where they mandate the funding to go with mandating you to have them. And so as we keep looking at that and wondering, are there going to be funds for that? It's kind of becomes how long do we wait to see if those funds show up? And so there's nothing that we've seen currently that can help fund us at that level. And traditionally as a police department with our city, sometimes getting federal grant funding is not the easiest because they look at the overall financial picture of the city and they aim for cities that don't have the ability to do things on their own. And so when you look at those things, we could keep trying and see if we get there, but I think it's just going to delay it too long.
And then my last two questions are more usage. One, I was just wondering, could you, we're not approving your policy on these or anything, but could you just kind of give us examples of, we know it's not running the whole time they're in the car using the restroom, eating, all that kind of stuff. Can you give us examples of when they turn it on typically and when they would turn it off again? So
anytime they get out of their vehicle and make an enforcement contact of any kind, they have to turn it on. And so you're correct, it's not running all the time, but it kind of is running all the time. And so it's like your DVR at home where it's always running in the background. And then if you hit record, it'll back up and record a little bit of your TV show. The cameras do the same thing. And so if I was in my car and got out, but something happened right before I could turn the camera on and I turn it on, it will back up 30 seconds and record the video. It doesn't catch the audio, but it records the video. And so anytime they get out and make enforcement contacts or they're conducting criminal investigations, they have to turn them on. There's some select cases where they don't have to, depending on the circumstance. And for instance, in the case of interviewing a sexual assault victim who may not want to be interviewed on camera, they can turn them off. But as far as when they turn them off on the normal course of business, it's at the end, the natural end of whatever the contact is, or if they're directed by a supervisor for some reason to turn it off is when they can turn it off. But in reality, it's when they get out of the car to do just about anything, they turn it on.
And then I just want to ask about we're not doing the dash cams, and I don't think the cameras are high enough to be very useful while the officer's in the car. So is there a plan to move to dash cams? Is that kind of what we're hoping is going to happen, and a time frame on that? Because it seems like that would be really important as you're approaching a scene or something's happening before you get out of a vehicle to have that recorded.
So you are correct. Most of the videos I watched of people driving, I have a great view of the body camera and the logo of the steering wheel right in front of you, because the cameras are centered on their chest. So driving, they are not very helpful. We found when we looked at what our need was more. In the past, we did have car cameras, but the car cameras obviously only catch what's right in front of the car. So if the officer's to the side or is in someone's house, it doesn't catch anything. And so our look at it was we wanted the body camera where we saw their physical actions outside the car more than we wanted the in-car view of them driving someplace. And so when looking at the two, we decided to go to body cameras before the car cameras and then evaluate what we need next, because it is a considerable cost difference to go from the body camera to the car camera, to the tune of a couple $1,000s more per system. And so we decided to go with the body cameras first, see if it's meeting the needs we have of what we're trying to do. And if we need to add the cars later, then we'll look at that. But you're correct, it's not going to catch anything while they're driving. But what we felt was more of a need was when they're out of the car and interacting with people.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, and then we'll take public comment and then phones. My question is about unlimited data storage. Are you able to share how long Roseville Police Department will keep this data? Is it indefinite?
It's not indefinite. So the retention period, I believe, is 2 years for video, dependent on if it's what kind of a court case it is. So, for instance, any evidence related to a homicide, we keep forever. And so if we have video of something like that, it will stay forever. But just the run-of-the-mill, everyday stuff is a 2-year window, and then that's in accordance with how we keep all of our other evidence and video retention, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open it up to public comment. I know we have a few phone calls. We'll take those that are in person here this evening. Does anyone want to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. We'll start with our first phone call.
Good evening. You may make your comments now.
Thank you, Lisa Larkin, Roseville. I just want to say I'm very glad to see this coming in front of the council. I've called in about it on several occasions. I've had conversations with Troy, and I would like to see you approve this. It's the first step. Yes, it's not everything. The car cams, which I agree with Councilmember Albert, that the car cams are very important. But this is the first step, and I believe that this will give some trust to the community. The one thing I had a concern about that Councilmember Albert also asked was about turning on the cameras. Obviously, there is room for error when you get out of a car and forget to turn your camera on. And so I just don't know how they plan to address that, but I'd be interested in knowing. And then also, Chief Troy also mentioned a couple of $1,000s per unit. Are we talking about a couple of $1,000s per unit for the car cam for how many cars? 100. What's the ballpark figure on what that additional cost would be? Thank you.
Thank you. Next call, please.
Thank you for calling. You may make your comments now.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Crawford, and I'm a resident of Roseville, Sun City. I appreciate the presentation tonight. I especially appreciate the questions that the council asked. They answered my questions as well, as I'm sure many members of the public. I really appreciate the positive attitude coming from our chief of police and our city manager. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be a very successful program, and it will add public safety as well as protect our officers. So thank you very much, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more call in just to announce again the phone number to call in. I think there's about a 30-second delay, but the number is 916-774-5353. You can put the next call through, please.
Good evening. You may make your comments now.
Hello, my name is Jeff Harper, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting out a little bit because I'm up in Amador County. But anyways, I would ask the city council to please give Mr. Bergstrom both his dash cam and the body cams. I think that that would protect our police from lawsuits, and it could all end up paying for itself just with one really bad lawsuit. And our police themselves and their lives on the line for us every day. We do a great job in Roseville. If this helps to protect them, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no more calls, and I'm assuming there's no one here in the audience tonight. So I'll close public comment. And does council have any other questions or deliberations before we take action?
Well, Madam Mayor, I I was a little stunned when you said it's only $2,000 more for the dash cam. Can you
I
go?
believe that's what the cost is. We didn't dive entirely into dash cams because we were focused on body cameras, so I can come back and we have
Yeah.
65 or 70 patrol cars, and it's considerably more, plus the storage then goes way up. And so we're talking that amount for equipment. We'd have to talk with the company about what that means on the storage end, because it's
Thank you. I
it's
think,
obviously a lot more.
It, to Vice Mayor Hadashell, if I can just add, the contract does allow us to move forward with dash cam. So, it's the whole adage, though, everything can't be critical and timely, right? It's critical for us to move forward with the body cams at this point, given the technology workload and the current workload. Even if we had the funding available today, it would be very difficult to do both simultaneously.
Totally understand, totally agree, and thank you, because that $2,000 is like when you buy a car. There's the hard cost, right, and then there's the operation and maintenance, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, want to read the motion?
The motion is to adopt resolution number 21-306, approving a master equipment agreement by and between Lenslock, Inc. and the City of Roseville, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Vice Mayor Hadashell?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to item 7.2, Villages at Sierra Vista Community Facilities District Number 1, Series 2021 bond issuance. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. Dennis Kaufman, your Assistant City Manager and Chief Financial Officer. The staff recommendation with this item tonight is to approve issuing the 2021 series of bonds for the Villages at Sierra Vista Community Facilities District Number 1. For background, the purposes of setting up a Community Facilities District, or CFD, is to create a land-secured financing tool to fund construction of authorized facilities or services. This CFD was formed in May of 2018, and 2 series of bonds have been previously issued. The first series of bonds were issued in July of 2019 in the amount of about $12.5 million. The second series of bonds were issued in July of 2020 in the amount of about $9.8 million. And the Series 2021 bonds that are recommended tonight will have a not-to-exceed amount of $11.5 million. The maximum authorized indebtedness of this particular CFD is $310 million. And I think it's important to note that these bonds are secured by special taxes that are levied on the properties in the district, and the bonds are not an obligation of the city. The authorized facilities that can be financed with the bonds are listed on this slide and include transportation improvements, including portions of Vista Grande Boulevard, Market Street, and Fitterman Road, as well as utility infrastructure and park and open space improvements. The CFD may also be used to finance authorized maintenance and operations for facilities that are funded by the CFD with a useful life of 5 years or more. This CFD will be used in the future to finance authorized services to maintain or replace that infrastructure and improvements for generations in the future. The recorded map in the presentation shows the district boundaries with Fitterman Road on the right or east side of the development and Vista Grande on the southern border of most of the development. And you can see phase 1 of the Villages development is shown on the right side of the map in the area that's not crosshatched. And the next map shows the future phases. Phase 1 of the Villages, again, is shown in the gray. Phase 2 of the Villages is shown in the green. And this third bond issue is timed to coincide with phase 3 of the Villages development, which is drawn on this map with large dotted lines around four parcels that represent 297 lots within the development. So the staff recommendation tonight is to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds for the Villages at Sierra Vista CFD number 1. And approving the related actions and documents, including the form of the preliminary official statement, which is the document that's used to market the bonds. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Does the council have any questions of Dennis? I don't see anyone.
Good report. Thank you.
I'll open up to public comment. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to comment on this item? We'll do in person first. I don't see anyone coming forward, and I have a sign that says there are no calls, so I like the sign. Thank you. It's very helpful back there. In case you all don't know, there's somebody holding a sign there taking phone calls. You can't see what I see. Okay, I will close public comment and ask our assistant clerk to please read the motion.
To adopt resolution number 21-297, a resolution authorizing the issuance of special tax bonds for and on behalf of the City of Roseville Villages at Sierra Vista Community Facilities District Number 1, Public Facilities, approving and directing the execution of supplement number 2 to fiscal agent agreement, approving the form of preliminary official statement, approving sale of such bonds pursuant to a bond purchase agreement, and approving other related documents and actions. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Vice Mayor Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord,
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci,
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça,
Yes.
and Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes. Thank you very much, Helen. Okay, we will move on to appointments. Item 8.1, Board and Commissions biannual vacancies. And I'll give Helen a minute to get settled down there.
Thank you. Mayor Bernasconi and City Council members, I'm the Assistant City Clerk Helen Dreyer, and I've asked Deputy City Clerk Katrina Six to help me with the tabulation of votes. Item 8.1 has to do with the appointment to the boards and commissions that have vacancies. The first one that we're going to ask council to make an appointment to is the Design Committee. We are appointing one member from the 4 individuals that submitted applications. Your ballots in front of you are the yellow form, and once you fill out your ballot, if you would this direction, and Katrina will tabulate those.
Thank you. I also think it's important to share, too, for those that are watching remotely and those that are here this evening, that we have received video interviews for each of the candidates, which was about 3 hours spent this weekend. So, and we've reviewed their applications, so we have each done our homework. So it's important to note that.
Okay. Council, let's see, Vice Mayor Howdeshelt votes for Rex Clark. Mayor Bernasconi votes for Anna Higgins. Councilmember Mendonça votes for Rex Clark. Councilmember Rakucci, Rex Clark. And Councilmember Alvord, Anna Higgins. Have a motion to appoint Rex Clark.
So moved.
Second.
And my roll call vote. Vice Mayor Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
Member Mendonça. Yes. And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Next, we have appointment to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. There are 3 vacancies. And the ballot for that is the green ballot. Okay. Vice Mayor Howdeshelt votes for Joshua Emerson, Jeff Richardson, and Michael Tronis. Councilmember Mendonça votes for Andrew Boren, Jeff Richardson, and Michael Tronis. Councilmember Rakucci votes for Jeff Richardson, Michael Tronis, and Audrey Young. Mayor Bernasconi votes for Jeff Richardson, Sherry Sullivan, and Michael Tronis. Councilmember Alvord votes for Joshua Emerson, Jeff Richardson, and Michael Tronis. Okay. That only got 2. All right, so 5. So we have, we don't have a quorum. Do we want,
They don't need a
we don't have to have a quorum?
No, they
No,
can.
okay.
When they
Okay.
vote.
All right. Then may I have a motion to appoint Joshua Emerson, Jeff Richardson, and Michael Tronis?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haudashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci? Yes. Councilmember Mendonça? Yes. And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes.
All right. Lastly is, no, not lastly. Grants Advisory Commission, we have 2 vacancies. Is the pink, okay. Vice Mayor Haudashelt votes for Ellison Carroll and Ellen DeBach Riley. Mayor Bernasconi votes for Ellison Carroll and Christopher Knight. Councilmember Mendonça votes for Ellison Carroll and Joshua Emerson. Councilmember Rakucci votes for Ellison Carroll and Vanessa Reed. And Councilmember Alvord votes for Joshua Emerson and Ellen DeBach Riley.
Joshua Emerson has already been appointed to Economic Development Advisory. So,
I'm intended to have Ellison Carroll and Ellen DeBach Riley.
Oh, God.
that would make 3 for Ellen.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Make 3 for Ellen. Change that then?
That's fine.
Okay. So, may I have a motion to appoint Ellison Carroll and Ellen DeBach Riley?
Yeah.
Can I have a question? Can we hear the tabs
I'd like you to
again?
read that.
I don't think that's right.
No?
I have 2 for Ellen. I have,
So he just added his, which makes 3.
Right. Scott just amended his vote.
oh, I see what happened.
Well, what was his, what was the
What was his
original
vote
vote?
first?
For me,
Yeah.
I accidentally circled Joshua, but I meant Ellison. So I have her and Ellen DeBach Riley on my vote.
Yeah.
Josh is already appointed.
Put mine to Vanessa.
He didn't realize that Josh has already been appointed to
Yeah,
the last
Oh.
one,
Yeah.
so swapping that
I
one
didn't
out.
carry it over from the prior one.
And then, can I ask another question too? So, some of them received 3 votes, but if somebody receives 2 votes, is that a revote?
So once you take a motion, because these are just nominations, and then once you call for a motion, then you vote on it, that's the actual vote. So if you want to do a renominations based on 2, you can.
Okay.
You don't have to.
So are you able to share what the votes are, or how many? We have a motion, right? We stopped
Have a
you?
motion, yeah.
Okay. Can you recap where we are with the?
Numbers.
I don't know.
So there was originally 2 for Josh, but now I believe they're now those, so those are gone.
Both of those?
That would be moved. I don't, so he moved his from
Vanessa and
here,
Ellen
and
each
then
have
he
2.
moved his to here.
Okay.
So I believe it's the 2, so it's just
It'd be-
the extra.
This would be a tie.
I don't believe so. I think there's still only 2 for her. And and now 3/3.
Want to do a revote just to make
If it makes it easier, I think we
Okay.
can do a revote if
Yeah.
if that works,
And
Michelle.
this time, do a revote, but don't vote for Joshua Emerson because he's already been appointed to another.
Right.
Okay, that's what should have been said.
Vote
Just a
one,
reminder.
wouldn't we?
I didn't vote.
Vote for one person?
And I think it's important, maybe talk to the council about if we're comfortable if somebody has 3 votes, moving them forward and approving them, but if somebody only has 2 votes, then I think that we should do a revote. I don't know how
Yeah,
you all
because
feel
of,
about
at least the
that.
majority
Agree
of
with
us.
Or we re-voted till we had a majority.
Yes.
I thought that was,
Oh, they have another ballot? They have their
Well, we
ballot?
have to go back to the EDAC, was it the EDAC that we had?
This is grants advisory.
It was EDAC that
But
Joshua
EDAC just
was
had
put
2.
on. Right.
It was the one where Joshua had 2 votes, Sherry Sullivan had 1, and
And that's what threw me. He only had 2. I went in my head. I didn't equate that to
So we're on planning right now, right?
No,
No.
grants.
grants.
Pass them that
well,
way.
no, we go,
Yeah, you're right.
We haven't done planning yet.
Got it.
no, but I think we need to go back one ballot.
so we finish this one on grants, since that's what we're
And then
on.
maybe we revisit because last Emerson just had 2 votes.
Oh, I've got Scott's ballot, and I'll cast it for him. Okay, no.
Tracy's.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, Madam City Attorney, you're going to earn your money tonight. So on this ballot is Joshua Emerson.
Right.
He's,
On the previous ballot, Joshua Emerson got 2 votes, and then there were 2 others who got 1 vote. Now, if that's revoted and Joshua Emerson doesn't get a majority of votes,
Yeah.
Joshua Emerson is still an eligible candidate under the grants
point.
advisory,
See, the
right?
thing is you already voted for Joshua. You
Well-
cannot go back because you already took a motion on that and that's been approved.
I
Can't
make a
open that
motion
back.
to reconsider. Right, 'cause I made the motion.
So under the Brown Act, if you're going to, you can't do that because then you have to renotice that item.
okay.
So I would consider that one done. But from going on forward, if you want to redo this one, that's fine. Keep in mind, when you're voting, actually, you're not really voting till you take the motion to vote. So this is why, when you did 2 for Mr. Emerson, someone made a motion and then you approved it 5-0.
Maybe just a reminder for all of us what the total is next time.
Yes.
For all of
Okay.
them.
And then you can take, then at that point, if you want to
Consideration of what we need to
re-vote
do.
again, that's fine. Yeah.
Maybe a base question is there a concern over Joshua Emerson on Act Dev? Would somebody rather have somebody different?
I
If
don't
not,
think
then
that's
it's a done deal.
That, to me, wasn't the issue. I was actually surprised that with a majority of the council voting for 2 folks and then not a majority voting for the others, that we moved forward with that. I thought we would do a revote, and I should have mentioned at the time, but since I was a vote in the affirmative, aren't I allowed to make a motion for reconsideration of that item?
Not of the last one that Josh, where we approved him. Michelle's saying we can't do that. We've
I
already
think
voted
EDAC's
on
a
it.
done deal at this point.
Yeah, I think we need to go forward.
Okay.
So then that means we're
Oh, we got
crossing
2
him
on
off
this,
on this one.
My law school speeches.
So on this vote, are we narrowed down to just the,
Is there an attorney in the House?
I think it's just a simple revote. You vote however, but
But not-
Josh is already on.
Ellison, because she's already voted on
You haven't voted.
No, we
anybody.
haven't.
Vote again.
Totally vote on this whole thing.
again.
Vote again, but leave Mr. Emerson off. Okay, Vice Mayor Howdeschelt votes for Ellison Carroll and Ellen DeBach Riley. Mayor Bernasconi votes for Ellison Carroll and Christopher Knight. Councilmember Mendonça votes for Ellison Carroll and Vanessa Reed. Councilmember Rakucci votes for Ellison Carroll and Vanessa Reed. Councilmember Albert votes for Ellison Carroll and Ellen DeBach Riley.
So we still have 2 and 2.
So again, we're back to the bottom two, I think.
There's 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
Oh, so Ellison Carroll has 5 votes.
All right.
Vanessa has 3.
Ellen DeBach Riley has 2. Christopher Knight has 1, and Vanessa Reed has 2. So there's a tie between Ellen DeBach Riley and Vanessa Reed.
Okay.
I would propose we
recommend that we
revote.
vote again. It sounds, we're solid on,
Yeah.
Allison's got 5 votes. We'll take another vote on the second person.
Out of ballots.
We just turn them
A
over?
scratch piece of paper, can we write our name, write the name and send it
Or
to you?
basically, Krista, you're the only one who's different. Do you want to?
Sure, I will change to Vanessa.
To Vanessa. Okay, so may I have a motion to appoint Ellison Carroll and Vanessa Reed?
So moved.
Second.
So Vice Mayor Haudashelt,
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord,
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci,
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça,
Yes.
and Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Next is the Planning Commission. If you would please cast your votes for 2 individuals on the coral-colored paper.
Are all these, no. Yes. Are all these candidates still, Michael Tronis is not? Anna Higgins, is she still,
Yep, she's still in.
Yeah.
thank you, Mayor?
Oh, shoot. I just put, guys, I marked 3. Can I cross one?
Yes.
Okay, guys.
Just as long as it's your ballot.
I know it's
Not
my ballot,
Tracy's.
and okay.
He's already anticipating a second.
Spoiled
All right.
ballot now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. If I can do it right.
Thank you. Okay, Vice Mayor Haudashelt votes for Clifford Hagenjos Jr. and Tracy LaBrea. Mayor Bernasconi votes for Clifford Hagenjos Jr. and Tracy LaBrea. And Councilmember Mendonça votes for Clifford Hagenjos Jr. and Tracy LaBrea. Councilmember Rakucci votes for Clifford Hagenjos Jr. and Tracy LaBrea. And Councilmember Alvord votes for Clifford Hagenjos Jr. and Tracy LaBrea. May I have a motion?
Wow.
So moved.
No, second.
Okay. Vice Mayor Haudashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes.
And then lastly, we had 3 vacancies on the Public Utilities Commission, and we had 3 applicants. May I have a motion to appoint Edward Bilski, Richard DeMarkey, and James Knox?
Second.
Vice Mayor Haudashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci? Yes. Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Katrina. Okay, we'll move on to item 9.1, West Roseville Specific Plan, PCL F25 and F26 Fitment Bungalows Design Review Permit.
Mayor and council members, I'm Mike Eisner, Development Services Director. With me this evening is Greg Bitter, your Planning Manager, and Sean Morales, Assistant Planner. The item before you is an appeal of a Planning Commission decision to approve a design review permit for a multifamily project on parcels F25 and 26, which is in the Fitment Ranch section of the West Roseville Specific Plan. This is property that has been allocated and zoned for high-density residential since the plan's adoption in 2004. Sean is going to provide you with the details and presentation, and we're all available for questions at the end.
And I'd encourage anyone who didn't grab the slides up here, if they want to follow along, to do so, because there's a good amount of information to keep track of. Let's see here. Back on. Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. As Mike said, my name is Sean Morales. I'm an assistant planner. I'm here to present to you the Fitment Bungalows appeal. The project site is located on parcels F25 and F26 of the West Roseville specific land, as noted on either side of Prairie Town Way, south of the intersection with Fitment Road. The project is bounded to the north by undeveloped commercial parcels, on the east and west by low-density residential subdivisions, and on the south by R.G. Phillips Park. The site is designated high-density residential with a maximum density of 25 units per acre and is zoned R3 for multifamily housing. The project before the council tonight is a design review permit to allow construction of 189 rental dwelling units on the two parcels, as well as site amenities and landscaping and parking. This slide you should have in front of you provides some context into the scope of the project and what decision is before the council tonight. The West Roseville specific plan was adopted by council in 2004. The land use plan was adopted at that time, identifying which parcels will be planned for what land uses, including low density, medium density, and high density residential. F25 and F26 were identified as high density parcels, and they've been designated high density since that time, with the last unit allocation amendment happening in 2009, bumping it from 20 to 25 units per acre, which was part of the second amendment to the West Roseville specific plan. And that was approved roughly 6 years before the surrounding single-family homes were constructed. As is typical with new development areas of the city, a development agreement was signed with the landowners of the specific plan. The agreement is a contract that ensures the owner will build various improvements and pay impact fees, and the city will regulate the land with the codes that were in place at the time of the contract. And some of the vested rights for the owner include the land use designations, the unit allocations, and the development standards, including height, parking, and setbacks, etc. Given that the land use and zoning allow a 277-unit housing complex, a design review permit is the only entitlement that is needed in order to approve the 189-unit Fitment Bungalows project. And the review is limited to making the 4 findings listed on the slide related to site plan and building elevations. Additionally, staff is not able to provide the council with the required evidence to make the findings for denial of the project or a reduction in the number of units. State legislation SB 330 enacted in 2019 requires the council to adopt written findings for denial of a housing development with a preponderance of evidence that the project would have a specific adverse impact based on objective standards or policies. And once again, I cannot provide the evidence to make those findings. The project includes 141 residential buildings across 2 parcels. The entrance and exit to each parcel will be on Prairie Town Way, which will go north to the signalized intersection with Fitment Road. Emergency vehicle access will be located on Autumn Leaves and Rustler on the outside of the project. And the project is designed generally in clusters or pods of 3 buildings with 4 unit types. Plans 3 and 4 are 2-story detached units. Plans 1 and 2 are located together in a 3-story building with garages below. The buildings in each pod are oriented as shown on the slide, with private yard space between the multi-unit buildings and single-unit buildings. 397 off-street parking spaces are required for the project, and the applicant proposes to provide 404 spaces. In addition to the spaces on site, there will be approximately 90 spaces located on the street adjacent to the project on Prairie Town, Autumn Leaves, and Rustler, and that's on the project side of the street. In addition to the residential buildings, the interior of the project includes amenities such as a playground with rope swing, playhouse and rope spinner, a swimming pool, wading pool, fitness building, and a clubhouse. The buildings meet the setback and site coverage requirements, and the landscape design provides adequate shade coverage as well as screening of undesirable views such as trash enclosures and surface parking. And so the site plan is consistent with the requirements of the specific plan, zoning ordinance, and the community design guidelines. For the elevations, the zoning ordinance standards for R3 zones establish a maximum height of 45 feet. The tallest buildings on site are 3 stories with a maximum height of 37 feet, 5 inches. The 2-story units are located adjacent to the street, and these units are up to 28 feet tall, similar to the existing 2-story homes in the adjacent neighborhood. There are 6 color schemes proposed in a variety of neutral tones that complement the colors of the adjacent homes. The elevations have material, roof form, and wall plane variation, and units adjacent to the street are required to include additional enhanced materials on their sides. The non-residential buildings are single-story, set in the center of the project, and use complementary colors and materials as the rest of the project. The elevations are consistent with the design guidelines and are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The project is exempt from CEQA under Section 15182, which exempts projects consistent with the specific plan EIR. In addition to being consistent with the specific plan EIR, the project is consistent with the subsequent negative declaration from 2009 that I mentioned earlier, which raised the density from 20 to 25 units per acre, and this project proposes 17 units per acre, so below that. For community outreach, the applicant and staff attended 2 virtual meetings for this project with the Fitiment Farm and West Park Neighborhood Associations. And there was much discussion on the project, and staff received inquiries from 27 residents to be added to a list of interested individuals. After the meeting, staff created a page on the Planning Division website with frequently asked questions and more information on the project. A 3rd meeting was held with a select group of residents to discuss remaining concerns at April 22nd. Notice of the Planning Commission hearing was sent to the property owners within 300 feet, as well as the interested individuals list. And in response to the notice, staff received a letter from 5 residents that was co-signed by 138 other residents in the area. A notice was also sent for tonight's hearing. So at the Planning Commission hearing on May 13th, the Commission voted 6-1 to approve the project. 18 people spoke in opposition, and the testimony was consistent with the concerns outlined in the letter received before the hearing. The Commission added 2 conditions of approval to the project. 2A addresses visual impact of carports by requiring enhanced materials, and 27 addresses impact of light coming through the EVA driveways by requiring a solid gate to be installed rather than bollards. On May 24th, an appeal of the Commission approval was submitted to the City Clerk by Mike Teskey, which is what brings the item before the Council tonight. So the appeal submitted by Mr. Teskey referred back to the points made in the original letter, which also echoed the concerns from the hearing. And Mr. Teskey sent a subsequent letter on July 1st that covers similar concerns. And there are 4 main topics you can see on the slide that all of these different communications referenced: aesthetics, parking and traffic, safety, and controlled access. Staff provided a written response to the original letter, and I will comprehensively address issues raised on each topic on the next slides. So for aesthetics, the appellant stated that the 3-story design is not harmonious with the surrounding neighborhood. However, the 2-story units adjacent to the street provide an intentional transition of height to the 3-story buildings behind. And the 3-story buildings are set back roughly 60 feet from the street and 120 feet from the homes across the street. The 2-story units fronting the street are only 28 feet tall, approximately the same as the 2-story homes that already exist in the neighborhood. Additionally, the development agreement vests the property owner with the ability to rely on the zoning ordinance standards. The appellant stated that the project's white paint does not complement the house colors in the neighborhood, and that the project's modern farmhouse architecture is incompatible with the design of the surrounding homes. The applicant has proposed to use 6 different color schemes to create variety amongst the individual buildings throughout the project. One of the schemes proposes a siding and accent color called high reflective white, as shown in the upper right image. However, this is an accent color of just one of the 6 different schemes. The design guidelines call for multifamily projects to complement adjacent developments, but to avoid duplication. And so staff compared the architecture and colors for the project to existing homes and found many complementary features, including the two-story form, pitched roof, neutral color schemes, the stucco material, and horizontal or vertical accent siding. The appellant also stated the architecture of the project should be varied and feature different styles. This has never been required or desired of multifamily projects. A typical project will feature variations on one specific architectural style, as was the case with the recently completed Harvest at Fitment Ranch apartments shown in the bottom image on your screen. If anything, the Fitment Bungalows provides more variety than is typical through its varying building mass and height. And the appellant requested that the CMU wall on the north side of the project feature enhanced design, but as you can see in the slide, it already features a textured split face, pilasters, and a capstone. For parking and traffic impacts, the appellant encouraged the city to focus on the size of the units rather than the zoning ordinance when considering the amount of required parking. There is no precedent for the city to require more parking than that required by the zoning ordinance. Ignoring this requirement would be in conflict with the city council approved specific plan, development agreement, general plan, and zoning ordinance, and state planning laws. The project exceeds the zoning ordinance standard, and staff added condition 67 to the project, which requires that garages be kept free and clear for storage, or for parking, free of storage and clear for parking. The appellant provided concerns related to an increase in neighborhood traffic. The project proposes 30% fewer units than allocated to the parcels, resulting in 30% fewer vehicle trips than expected in the city's traffic model. Additionally, the entrances are located on Prairie Town Way, which feeds directly to Fitment and not through the neighborhood. During the public testimony, one project opponent brought up concerns about the project being consistent with the analysis in the EIR for the specific plan. However, it is consistent with this EIR and the subsequent negative declaration. The appellant claims the project fails to provide safe pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle linkages as called for in the design guidelines. However, crosswalks and bike lanes on public roadways are not a part of this private development project. The Public Works Department has a study open to determine whether crosswalks would be needed in any locations. The appellant had a concern about front door entries onto public streets. However, these provide the pedestrian linkages that the design guidelines called for and are the good foundation of good planning principles as they provide for activity and engagement with the surrounding neighborhood, as well as the amenities such as the park and future commercial sites. The appellant also had concerns related to speeding within the neighborhood. That also is more under the jurisdiction of Public Works, and they have studies open to study speeding and cut-through trips. And lastly, all of the appellant's letters had concerns about controlled access or fencing, and so they indicated that the project should be separated from the single-family homes with fencing. The design guidelines do not require fencing around multifamily housing. Fencing is appropriate when a multifamily project shares a property line with single-family lots, which is not the case here. And fencing would create a barrier to the connectivity that is desired and is not appropriate for this design. The appellant also suggested that fencing and limited access would reduce crime in the project. However, staff consulted with the police department, and the police department did not see any design features that would increase crime above any other residential project. The appellant stated that fence around the project would also reduce light and noise pollution. And however, lighting for the units is similar to lighting for a single-family home using wall sconces. And the two parking areas with EVA access adjacent to the street will be screened by landscaping, and the small driveway will be screened by the EVA access gate that was required with the Planning Commission. In conclusion, as the proposed multifamily project is a principally permitted use, the scope of the City's Council's review is limited to design. The project is consistent with the general plan, specific plan, zoning ordinance, and community design guidelines, and the findings for the design review permit can be made. Therefore, staff recommends that the Council adopt a resolution to adopt the 4 findings of fact and uphold the Planning Commission approval and deny the appeal of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you for that. So for the nature of the appeal, I just want to outline how this public hearing will occur. So we have heard from our assistant planner, Sean Morales. I will inquire if the council members have any questions. I will then allow the applicant 12 minutes for their presentation. We'll allow the appellant 12 minutes for their presentation. I will open it up to public comment. I will close public comment, and then we will allow 3 minutes each for the appellant and the applicant's rebuttal. And then I'll close the public hearing, and the council can then, it'll go back to the council for deliberation. So before we get started hearing from the applicant, does the council have any questions?
I just had one. Sean, can you review with me just the entrance and exits of the residents in this? You said Prairie Town Way. Is that the only exit, or is there another way? Is there?
The only entrance and exit for the residents is on Prairie Town Way. Each project branches off of Prairie Town Way, and the driveways on the outside are just emergency vehicle access.
So they're both on a different side?
Either side of Prairie Town Way for each parcel.
There was an opportunity for them to get out more than just once.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just wanted to, so Prairie Town Way is going to go up the middle. It's not done yet, but I know they're building that. On the outside is Autumn Leaves, and is it Prairie Way?
Rustler Drive.
Rustler.
Yeah.
Okay. And those side streets are not, there's no stoplight at it, so people want to go out and turn left on Fitiment, which is where most traffic's going to go. Once this is built, the best way to go out is going to be through Prairie Town Way, because that'll be where the traffic light is.
That's the only signalized intersection in that little area.
So do we expect, would that take pressure off the outside streets, which right now you only have the outside streets for traffic going out? I mean, I guess they can go back to
the addition of Prairie Town Way would definitely, and
take
since
pressure
that's
off
where
the
the
sides.
entrance and exits lead to from the development, you would figure most people would use that.
Okay.
Prairie Town Way.
I just couldn't remember. I don't think, I was out there and I didn't remember any other lights, so, okay.
So on Rustler and Autumn Leaves, are there doorways facing those streets?
Yes, there are doorways facing the streets from the two-story detached units onto Autumn Leaves and Rustler.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll start with the applicant.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Marcus LaDuca, 3200 Douglas Boulevard. On behalf of Vondale Homes, the applicant for the Fitiment Bungalows project, very pleased to be before you tonight with the approval of your staff and the support and approval of the nearly unanimous Planning Commission. Your staff has done an outstanding job in the staff reports, both the Planning Commission and to the council tonight, and as well as their presentations to Commission and also this evening. And we'd like to thank them for all their work in the processing of this application, as well as getting us to this point. We'd also like to express our appreciation to the Fitiment Farms Neighborhood Association and to our adjacent residents for their input during the planning process. That input helped make this a better project that the Commission reviewed in May. Again, the staff report, the presentations are very thorough. I'm not going to get into the details of the project itself. Just want to make sure we're very focused on what is before you tonight and what is not. The project's land use or density or any of the programs, ordinances, standards, requirements, or policies vested by the project's development agreement are not before you. What is before you is design review only, and that is really based upon your review of the West Roseville Specific Plan Design Guidelines and the city's community design guidelines. Staff's already reviewed the fact that there's an environmental exemption here under state law, but that not to mean that the project has not been analyzed environmentally. It was exhaustively analyzed. These parcels as high-density residential since 2004 in the specific plan EIR, as well as the negative declaration for the Second Amendment to the West Plan and subsequent amendments in those intervening years. The project before you is fully consistent with the codes, ordinances, requirements, standards, and all other objective policy or requirements of the city. Yet this result was not obtained by maximizing development on the site. I've had a number of projects in my career where one of the arguments against the projects is that the project was too dense for the property in question. That's simply not the case here. As the staff report and the presentation note, the project before you at 189 units is roughly 68% of what's the allowed density, or roughly 2/3 on the site. That is vested land use. So you could have 277 units, and at 37.5 feet tall for the 3-story component of the project, that is roughly 80% of what the zoning code allows. At the same time, that project height is roughly only 3 feet above what's allowed in the surrounding R1 residential neighborhoods. If this project did get built out at 25 units to the acre, again, there's a legal right to do so. Every building would have to be 3 stories in height on the project site, which is what you see in just about every multifamily project built in Roseville over the last 25 years. Instead, the applicants come forward with a project that has only 2-story single dwelling unit buildings, look like single-family homes, on the street frontages at 28 feet high, consistent with the 2-story single-family residences across the street, which are at 27 feet height roughly. The 3-story multi-unit buildings are located in the rear behind those two-story units, and again, they are set back 60 feet from the street frontages and 120 feet from the nearest home on either on either of the neighborhoods to the west or east. Far from cramming as many units as possible onto the site, the design before you allows green spaces in between units on the site, as well as a whole host of recreational opportunities that I believe is unmatched by any multifamily project in the city of Roseville. As for the public process that took place here, as you very well know, the city's preferred process is for applicants to go out to the neighborhood association in which the project is located, which happened here. As staff reviewed, there were a couple neighborhood meetings, and those meetings produced changes to the project. As I mentioned in my letter to you last month, enhancements were added to the facades facing the street. Again, still consistent with the community design guidelines. It didn't go off on a tangent. There were recreational amenities added to the large number of amenities that were already on the site, and 36-inch high shrubs were added to screen headlights and parking areas on the property so people couldn't view cars and headlights from cars. I mentioned the community design guidelines because they really provide a key guidance for the council in your review of our request tonight. Guideline MF26 states that, quote, building design should be consistent with the defined architectural style and should incorporate the architectural embellishments commonly associated with that style. The project before you is designed, as staff mentioned, in modern farmhouse style and maintains that style throughout the project. Guideline MF27 states that, quote, projects that consider and complement the context of existing and surrounding projects, but are original in design and avoid duplication, the copycat effect, are highly encouraged. The project before you has a number of complementary colors, as reviewed in the staff report and the presentation, to the surrounding homes, including earth tone color schemes, stucco base material, and horizontal and vertical accent siding. And the staff memo that's in your packet to the Planning Commission that reviewed the first letter that was submitted to the city covers this in greater detail. Guideline MF57 speaks to project landscaping, stating that, quote, trees should be a minimum of 15 gallon, with a recommendation that larger sized trees be incorporated for accent or activities areas. Here, the trees along the street frontage are 24-inch box trees, as the city required for the Campus Oaks Apartments project, and in excess of what the city required for the Harvest at Fitment Ranch project, which has 15-gallon landscape trees on the project frontages. As you can see from the whole stack of project exhibits before you, this project, compared to many other multifamily projects in the city, has very distinctive design. It has rich landscaping. It has 11 separate recreational amenities in the project. 3 of those were added again after the neighborhood meetings. And the Planning Commission, in making its recommendation, added some other changes. As staff highlighted, the bollards at EVA locations on adjacent public streets were replaced with gates for screening. And also they require that carports match colors and materials of the project, again, keeping consistent with the community design guidelines. Late last week, you received a letter from the appellant asking for a number of items, making several points, some of which would be inconsistent with the community design guidelines or with city objectives and policies contained in the general plan. On the issue of the white color, I know there's been a lot of discussion about that in the correspondence. As staff mentioned, it's one of actually 6 design color schemes in the project, and a great deal of thought went into that color selection by the design team, and they think that it truly makes the project work well in terms of the overall color scheme. The project design team has looked at alternative color, and they just don't think that it works as well in the overall color scheme before you as the project that is presented to you tonight and approved by the Planning Commission. It's unfortunate that the color is named high reflective white, but that's the name, and when you say high reflective white, you have the reaction that probably I have, which is, wow, it's highly reflective. And again, as you looked at the elevations on the project, and we do have material boards here that we can pass around to the council, it is not as reflective as that term has a tendency to jump out at. For adding rock fascia, faux shutters, bump outs above windows, and curves above front door porches of 2-story units, those elements are not found in modern farmhouse design and thus directly conflict with guideline MF26. The same comment applies to materials suggested for the carports of the project, which again, the Planning Commission jumped in, added a condition seeking consistency with those colors and materials of the project, but again, consistent with the overall design theme of the project. Tack-on elements not found in the modern farmhouse project design only add a necessary significant cost to the project, especially when one considers that the carports face internal to the project and not to surrounding public streets. Their buildings intervene in terms of any view from the street, adjacent streets. Regarding the proposed brick wall, as staff mentioned, it's been highly designed. If this and the city and our neighbors actually are somewhat fortuitous at the order of development in this area. Had the commercial project come forward first, you would have had a wall at the back of a commercial center. I can guarantee you it would not be up to this level, and it would not be required to be under the community design guidelines. This wall will be seen by residents of the project, which is why so much effort went into the design to make this a very attractive wall, because the residents of this project, as opposed to residents adjacent to the project, will see this every single day. So again, it's just the way that the order of development, the commercial did not come in first. As for a 36-inch or 48-inch decorative fence around the project, such a request goes directly against a number of goals and policies in the city's general plan to have walkable projects with homes that front on residential streets and the ability to have folks walk out their front door to access sidewalks and pathways. This project is not adjacent to single-family homes. It's across the public streets. Walling off such a project appears almost punitive to the future residents of this project. Again, the land use on this site has been determined since 2004, and the idea was to be able to have, with this design, to have residents walk out directly from their front door onto the adjacent streets and sidewalks. And we believe they have every right to do so in the way that the project is designed and the way the city has planned the West Plan. Rather than, again, the idea otherwise would be to force them to walk to single entry points or various entry points throughout the city as opposed to right outside their front door. Finally, is the permit parking for overnight parking on adjacent public streets that cannot legally be the subject of a design review permit on an individual project. That is a matter for the City Public Works Department, the Planning Department, and other departments in the city who, among other things, would have to look at hiring additional city personnel to actually have to enforce nighttime parking violations that might occur under such a program. I just have a few seconds left. Again, SB 330, staff has talked about it. We are fully compliant with all city codes, ordinances, programs, plans, and policies. That triggers a limited review under SB 330, but I think it's more than that. The project before you has, again, really tried to not maximize development, tried to be sensitive to surrounding uses by stepping back on the site. And over the last 30-plus years of representing projects in Roseville, I've represented a number of multifamily projects and seen a lot of others in specific plans where I represented the master developer built. I think that this project in closing far exceeds in terms of its unique design and the amenities that it offers the city, something far in excess of what the city has seen in multifamily projects. With that, I'd ask you to deny the appeal and approve the project as presented to you tonight and as conditioned by your staff and the Planning Commission. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we went over by a minute, so we'll use the same time frame for the appellant. If the appellant wants to come forward.
It's far more intimidating than it looks sitting back there.
Well, welcome.
I am not an attorney, nor am I a professional, so. All right.
Well, go for it. You've got up to 13 minutes. You
Got
don't
up
need
to
to use
13
that,
minutes.
but
Well,
we're here to listen.
hopefully I won't use it all. I do have to start since I am not a professional and say hi to my kids. Hi, kids. Good evening, council. My name's Mike Teskey. I live on Angus Road. The appeal before you is on behalf of myself and 138 of my neighbors. We live in the neighborhood surrounding this proposed project, and we share concerns with how it's laid out, how it's currently being proposed, and its ability to blend in with the existing homes. The project sits adjacent to 300 single-family homes that I occupy, as well as my additional neighbors surrounding, and we're worried that if this project moved forward with no changes, we certainly appreciate what the Planning Commission had done, but if it moved forward with no changes, that it wouldn't blend in with the community that we've built and that exists in there today. There's a lot of activity. We don't want it to be an afterthought. We want it to blend in. We welcome new neighbors. I personally would love to see all the weeds gone. So I'm excited about these parcels, being developed as part of this project. As neighbors and proud citizens of Roseville, I've been here since I was about 6, about this tall. We're excited for the opportunity to welcome new neighbors into these parcels. We'd love to see this project built. We appreciate what Van Dale has done in terms of the density. We're not arguing the density. The density is what it is. We know what it could be. It could also be less, but they've chosen a density for these parcels that fits. So we're not arguing. We're not looking at the density and saying we don't want high-density residential there. We want a project that can be built successfully and can be highly sought after as much as the rest of our neighborhood for many years to come. We're a very active neighborhood. We have many young families. We have neighborhood events at the park. We invite everybody to come. We have people that come from the other side, from other neighborhoods to join in our events, and we welcome them with open arms. We share the desire to continue making Roseville a great place to live. The concerns we have predominantly fall into 3 categories and mostly surround the design. Those are architecture and exterior design, landscaping design, and parking and traffic. As we look at the architecture and exterior design, they talked about high reflective white. Yep, sounds scary. And it certainly can be. It's a 3-story tall building with paneling on the side of it painted high reflective white. Exactly what you would expect from a white building. It stands out. It's going to grab your eye. It's going to draw your eye to the focal point of the neighborhood versus the park. We ask that the white be toned down. It doesn't have to not be white. You don't have to paint it black, but maybe something that's not high reflective white. The white they've chosen, if you look at the RGB colors, and I believe I included that in the additional packet that we submitted, 255 across the board is pure white. That's blinding to your eyes. This is about as close as you can get to that. So we just ask, include some gray tone to it. Include some gray tone, some brown tones, something that blends in well but tones down the intensity just a little bit. We're not saying it doesn't have to be white. Again, an example of this, if you go by Roseville Parkway and Pleasant Grove, and you see the new, I think it's a 3 or a 4-story tall senior living facility. That facility is bright white. You can't drive through that intersection without that catching your eye. And that's a high reflective white. Given it may have more white, but we're still getting a proposal that has paneling 3 stories in the air, painted high reflective white to catch your eye. All we ask, tone it down. Blend it in with the surrounding homes. Architectural variety. The plans have one design repeated across each structure. Modern farmhouse, Vandale has brought that up, and totally understandable. They want to repeat it. It's easy to repeat. It's inexpensive to build in that fashion. Our neighborhood has a lot of variety in it currently. Colors don't necessarily define your architectural variety as you go from building to building to building. And ultimately, as you look across the Lennar and JMC single-family developments that exist currently, they have several. They have a mission style, a craftsman farmhouse, a French villa, a modern traditional. These are all variations of the facade of the home. The existing homes have different architectural themes with the use of stacked stone. In some of the photographs that I supplied as part of that packet, you see stacked stone on modern farmhouse. Why couldn't we incorporate that into these? Help it blend in with the neighboring homes that exist today. Faux elements, shutters. I know a lot of farmhouse structures that have faux shutters on them. Homes in this exact neighborhood have those same faux shutters. You could put a lot of different things on it, and it doesn't require a lot of change of the plans. All we're asking is meet us halfway. What can we do to help this blend in with the rest of the homes that exist today? Let's get to my favorite topic, the carports. Nobody loves a good carport like I do. I don't think anybody really loves a carport and gets up excited in the morning. But this apartment project features parking lots with lit carports, 3 of them to be exact. 2 where the emergencies are, and then an additional one on Rustler to the south. These are visible from the street. The emergency access ones, they've added gates. That's a great move in the right direction. Certainly excited to see that happen. But you still have views of parking lots. And it's nice to say, well, we're going to put in plants. Plants take time to grow. I don't know how many of you have planted something recently. I'm not a great planting person. I'm good with lawn, bad with plants. They start small, they stay that size for about, the current ones in my yard are about 5 years old, and I don't think they've grown an inch. But we need to have something more. Could we do something to help screen these carports? The view of a parking lot, the view of cars, the view of a carport structure. What can we do? I used to live over here by the fairgrounds. I'm a little backwards here. But I used to live over here by the fairgrounds. And I had that exact problem. My house was directly across from a parking structure, a parking carport area, headlights shining in my windows all night long. 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun would come up. Blackout shades helped a little bit, but you still watch the headlights coming through the window. We can certainly do something to help block that down. There's a lot of things we can do. Short height fences, architectural components that fit in there. We're not saying fence everything, but let's block the certain undesirable views that may exist from these carports. Being that there's 3, this is not a lot to ask. This is not a lot to inquire about or ask a builder to include to help knock some of that stuff down, screen those unsightly views from the sidewalk, from the park, from the neighboring homes. When you walk out your front door, is that something you really want to look at? Of course not. You can use a lot of these components in different areas, extending some fencing out a little bit, block the cars, use of landscaping in front of that to help create a nice, desirable landscape view. So I'll talk a little bit on the landscape design. The cement block wall, or a CMU wall, if you may be familiar with that, the ones proposed in this plan, they're certainly not your standard gray block wall. But if you look across Fittiment Farm, this neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhoods on the other side of Fittiment, and the new ones that are being built, this is not the same wall. This is a very different wall. And it meets certain criteria. But wouldn't it be nice if that wall matched the rest of the neighborhood? If it matched the rest of the walls throughout the community in the surrounding area? It's not a lot to ask. It's not a big change. So then strategic screening. I kind of touched on it a little bit, and it goes along with the carports. This is a concept to screening out different components and ways that you can take unsightly views and make them not as visible, not as impactful to people as you walk by, neighbors as you drive by, visitors to the community. And using different things, small short sections of fencing, more mature plants, rock-type landscaping. I've seen some very creative use of large rocks in Rockland. They can all accomplish the same thing. The neighborhood's not married to any one specific component. These are just ideas that we've had that we think could fit. Maybe some will, maybe some won't. But we're certainly open and willing to consider anything that accomplishes the goal. They talked a little bit about a wall all the way around the property. When we originally started talking about this project, we looked at other projects in the area that had similar features, and they had walls all the way around. We don't believe this requires a wall all the way around, nor do we want a wall all the way around. What we're asking for is some of that screening. Shield the unsightly views, make it blend in with the neighborhood. We want these folks that are going to be moving into these areas, we want them there. We want this project to be there. We just want it to make it look like it's a part of our neighborhood, a part of the community that exists there today, and then we can all work together in that sense. And the last piece really that I wanted to speak to really is parking. High-density residential projects throughout Roseville have seen their fair share of parking problems. We've probably all heard it. We've probably all seen it at different points in time. People choose their parking location based on convenience, typically, rather than the spaces that are assigned to them. They'll go and park in the shortest spot to get from my front door to my car. If my garage is behind me in another building or in a different carport on the property, if that's where my assigned space is, I'm probably going to park on the street. It's a shorter walk for me. I can carry my groceries in a little bit shorter. What if it's raining? I don't have to walk nearly as far. We see this all the time. The project meets the minimum requirements. Minimum requirements are great, but it doesn't necessarily deal with people behavior. We take a look at a couple of projects that exist in Roseville today that have these problems. The Paseo del Norte development on Pleasant Grove has that problem to the point where cars are spewing out the end of that community and into the CVS parking lot and into the vacant lots that are directly next to that area. The Lennar La Mason on the Blue Oaks has the same problem. There are cars everywhere dominating the streets, the predominant thing you see driving through there. And the Harvest at Fittyment Ranch Apartments, the new apartments that are there. Half the parking lot is empty, but the streets surrounding it are crowded with cars, people that have parked for convenience. One of the last things we would want to see, this project is directly in the middle of a neighborhood, is vehicles crowding out neighbors' ability to have their own guests over, because we've got folks from this complex that are parking based on convenience. And really, the parking vehicles on the street can create a danger. It can create a risk. I know I've been personally driving down residential streets with cars parked along the street. Scares the heck out of me that a kid's going to go and run out from between those cars. I never hope to have that become an issue, but it's something to certainly consider. This R.G. Phillips Park, when the weather's nice, when it's not 106, when it's nice and in the 70s, 80s, you will see a steady stream of kids from the morning until the afternoon crossing the street surrounding the park continuously. The addition of these residents will only add more of those kids. And we should do something before there's an incident. We don't want somebody to be in an accident. We don't want there to be a problem. And it certainly makes sense to do something to address that. We're not experts. I, again, stated at the beginning, I am not an expert. But we don't know what the best solution may be. So we proposed some things that came to our mind. The Public Works Department of the city certainly is far more an expert than we are. And we certainly look towards the Public Works Department for other suggestions. What might work? What could this council recommend or request of the Public Works Department to help address those concerns? We certainly don't want to wait and don't believe we should wait until after there's an incident in order to move forward. In conclusion,
okay, thank you.
It's my
You're out of time.
In conclusion, we as your neighbors are not asking the City Council to deny the proposal from Vandale Homes, but we do ask to have relevant changes made to the design so it becomes an extension of our already active and existing neighborhood, in harmony with the existing homes, walking paths, bike trails, and the park. We understand this project is necessary to support Roseville's housing plans and are excited to get some new neighbors. We certainly had wished Vandale, the developer, had been more willing to discuss the project project with all the existing neighbors and hear our concerns with a willingness to work with us and meet on the middle ground. Yes?
Sir, okay, you're
sorry.
over your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
I'd like to open this up to public comment now. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to comment on this item? You can come forward. Seeing no one is in person, do we have any, we don't have any phone calls. The number to call in is 916-774-5353. I don't see anyone that would like to make public comment. We'll close the public comment portion of it, and you have 3 minutes for a rebuttal, the appellant.
We went in reverse order, right? The appellant gets 3 minutes, or the...
So, Marcus, do you want to make your comments?
Comment.
Wasn't sure who you are putting to for rebuttal. Just a few comments again for the record. Marcus Loduca on behalf of Vandale Homes. If I could get the material board on the white. Again, this is, as you see in the elevations you have, but this is the actual material board, so you can actually see physical, see, touch, feel. The comparison to the project on Roseville Parkway and Pleasant Grove, which again is 3 to 4 stories of almost all white. Very different from one of 6 color tones that you see here that'll be mixed in on one set of buildings as opposed to throughout the project. I tend to agree if you have an entire project that's white, it's going to stand out quite a bit from the street, unlike what's proposed before you tonight. On the issue about having multiple designs in the pods of buildings. Well, there's not a multifamily project. Well, I don't know if in this, I know not in this city. I don't know if in this region you see one. You have a consistent theme, which the community design guidelines talk about for multifamily projects. You don't have different design themes on every single pod of buildings. Talk about a burden on trying to produce multifamily housing, you'd probably pretty much stop it in its tracks. As for, again, the carports, they're most basically internal to the project. I think your planning commission did look at those in terms of trying to make sure that those colors and materials were consistent, were upgraded, and be consistent with the rest of the project. In terms of discussing the wall separating from future commercial, this is not a wall on a major arterial that people drive by and ride their bikes by every day. It's going to be at the back of a commercial shopping center. The only people that are really going to see this wall once that shopping center were to be built are the residents of this project. And it has been upgraded, it is higher design. Adding something, making it like you would on an arterial roadway is simply unnecessary expense and almost changing the whole project in terms of whether it should go first rather than having the commercial go first, because I could tell you right now a commercial project going first would have a very, very basic wall. Again, on parking, the idea was to provide, not depend upon parking on the street. That's in addition to what the parking requirements that were met and actually exceeded in the project itself. The parking that'll be on Prairie Town, again, that's how people access the project. That's in addition too. I could see if the argument was being made, we're asking for street parking to count, but that's not the case here. And unlike the single-family homes, there's a requirement here that garages and carports be kept clear so that cars can park at them. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does the appellant want to make any other comments?
Maybe just very briefly, if I might. I don't have a lot. I just wanted to kind of speak on one real quick thing, the stoplight question. I think, Scott, that you had asked, or Councilman Alvord. Sorry. There's 3 stoplights there, one at Angus Road, one at the new street Prairie Town, and then one on Old Coach. So there's 3. 2 of them funnel vehicles through the existing neighborhood. One of them is directly connected to the project. And other than that, I really didn't have anything else. What I did want to do, I know it's a thankless job from the planning department, and I wanted to just thank Sean and Greg and everybody at the planning department. They have been awesome. So you guys have a great planning department. They do a wonderful job. And we certainly appreciate all the communication and help that they've provided us in understanding this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close public hearing. And does the council have any, we'll start with Councilmember Albert. I see you.
Okay, I got a couple questions. Is that the white we're talking about that came by us? Okay. Because that doesn't look near as bright as the documents, so you might want to look at that sample if you haven't seen it yet. Talking about walls, and I guess this is a staff question, I think it's a good point that the wall is only between the commercial and that edge of that project, not really the neighbors. But do we have all the other walls in Fediment Farm are the same, or do we have a variety of walls? I was confused about that.
So the majority of the walls are the walls along the landscaping setbacks for the arterials. So they're part of the backyards of houses. So they're part of the landscape design. The wall in this instance is really the main purpose is for noise attenuation from any loading docks or loading areas back of commercial building areas, dumpsters, etc., to the high density site. So really, it's I think Mr. LaDuca said the only people that are going to see it are the residents of this site until the commercial's built, and then any of the folks taking out cardboard and garbage behind the commercial buildings. So it really won't be visible to the general neighborhood. And I will say that this wall is much more highly designed. The wall materials and the capping are a higher level of design than we normally would see between a commercial and residential interface. Or at a commercial.
So if this was scooted up against Fediment, that would have the special wall.
That would be
the big monster wall thing. Okay.
Yes.
My other question, I appreciate all the addressing of the landscaping and all that, and I'll have some comments later when we give comment on it. But are you guys willing to change the white to tone it down a little bit?
Hello, my name is Tim Fisher from Vandale Homes. So what I did was when the request came in to review the high reflective white versus another white, I brought that to our whole team, including Mike Vandale, our COO, as well as our VP of Sales and all the other folks who spent a great deal of effort and time and thought into selecting the colors. And what they asked me to say was they really believe that the high reflective white that's chosen is the best white for the color scheme as designed for the project. So they asked me to relay to the council that they would prefer to stay with the existing white because they think that switching to a more gray color would be deleterious to the project, would negatively affect the project. So they asked that the council consider to keep the white as it is. They did say that they've chosen an alternate. It wouldn't be the Sherwin-Williams white family that is there, but there's another Kelly Moore white. I believe it's KMW 43, which is slightly different than the Sherwin-Williams white, maybe a little bit darker, that they could switch to if the council so directed. But they really wanted to make me emphasize that they believe that the white as originally chosen is by far the best white for that color scheme. And it really makes the color scheme pop.
Is there a cost savings to you to keep the same white versus tweak it?
It definitely makes more sense to keep it within the Sherwin-Williams family as all the other colors are. And there are various other whites and so forth even within Sherwin-Williams, but they all get a lot more gray. And there's already kind of shades of gray and so forth within that color scheme and in other color schemes. So they felt that not to belabor the point, but that white was the best. That there is another from another manufacturer, it would be somewhat inconvenient and maybe more costly to switch to that other color. So they asked to continue with the existing white if it's the council's direction.
I am not a color expert, and I mentioned that to the community members that I had spoken with, and I don't personally have a preference, but it would be nice if we could just get everybody happy on this one. I think that was all the questions that I had. And you guys, I was impressed reading all the changes that you had already made based on the neighborhood meeting and adding the park amenities and stuff. I do really think you did a good job as far as responding. So
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Vice Mayor Haldeshot, do you have any comment or any questions?
Yeah, I do have a series of questions. So the carports, I'm looking at the exhibit that came along with the staff report. It looks like there's a carport by the leasing center in the clubhouse. Is that right? There's one that, are those carports by now what is the emergency vehicle access? So I think that then the other site plan, I'm looking at the one that has Rustler, so I'm looking at the left-hand portion of that. The lighting in that goes, I assume, down?
Correct.
Right, not out, and we have lighting, we have some pretty good dark sky kind of requirements. Is there another, and then on the project boundary, which is next to the commercial, are those carports or are those guest
Correct.
park?
The majority of those spaces are carports. So the majority of the carports are located along the boundary with the commercial. There are some smaller sections, like you mentioned, at the EVA and facing some other internal streets within the projects.
All right, going to Rustler and then conversely, whatever, Autumn Leaves on that side. If I'm understanding the house plans correctly, it looks like on the side with Rustler, you probably have about 8 houses which have a sidewalk that leads direct. Well, let me ask it this way. I'm coming in off of Prairie Town Way. Where's my parking space for the 2 stories?
The parking space for the 2-story units would be in the ground floor of the 3-story building, directly
Okay.
behind the 2-story units facing to the internal streets of the project.
And I don't know which plan it is, but one of the plans, you have access through the side, and then another, you have a sidewalk.
That's correct.
On the one that has the sidewalk, do you have access to the house?
Yes. So there are 2 plans above in the 3-story building. And so one has pedestrian access to the front door from the internal streets. The other has pedestrian access from its garage below that unit within that 3-story building, as well as pedestrian access on a sidewalk between the 2-story detached homes in the front of the pod, if you will.
Okay. There was one more question, and I now lost it. Carports, parking. Somebody else will ask it, I'm sure.
Any comments, questions over here?
I had one question on the carports. So is this recessed tube lighting like fluorescent, or are these corner marker lights underneath these? What kind of lights are they?
They're basically recessed under the structure of the carport.
They're recessed, and the carport roof, if I refresh my memory as I was reading through this, it's relatively flat, right? So the light will hang down slightly below. And then this is not brushed concrete. This is asphalt underneath these parking. So the only reflectivity would be from the top, from underneath the carport, and whatever painted vehicle was underneath, right?
Correct.
And so off the top of your head, if you don't know, you can get back to me, but what's the standard wattage we're running in those carports?
They're pretty minimal. I don't know off the top of my head what
It's not like a
wattage-
super bright yellow. I mean,
That
we're
is
talking
correct.
consistent with other types of parking. Okay. Thank you very much.
Just some follow-up questions on the emergency vehicle access. Are this access where our fire department has like a clicker and can go in, or is it like the trash people can undo it?
More be like undoing. There are specific standard in the city standards where there's a padlocked gate, and so that is what is proposed. So we would comply with the city standards for.
I just was wondering when it says emergency, is it a real emergency, or is it the trash man? It's an emergency too, but just.
Emergency vehicles only.
Okay. And then, from what I understand in previous comments, that you'll have large plants around there?
That is correct. There's 36-inch tall shrubs, as well as the 24-inch box trees and so forth that are along the frontage between. There were some renderings provided, and that they're in the staff presentation, which show the views from autumn leaves, from Rustler Drive, and so forth. And we believe that the landscape architect has done an excellent job of screening those facilities, whether it's carports or other structures, from the existing streets, using both landscaping as well as the vehicular gates at the EVAs, which will have a solid nature to them to prevent headlights from those parking areas coming through.
Okay, no, that's good. The first question I asked was about Prairie Town Way and access. I just want to make sure that if there really was an emergency, you have other accesses too, and so you do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
I remember my other question. The white. How that's one color component of the unit.
That is correct.
How many guesstimate? How much is that? A third of it? Is that 100 square feet or something?
There
like
are
that?
some renderings that are in the staff packet. If you look at page 5 in the staff presentation, it shows the white is basically for some siding areas, if you will, and some accents. And so if you look at the presentation, it shows some. For example, on page 5, if I recall correctly, there's kind of a top right corner and a bottom left corner rendering of the project. And you'll see a couple places where there's some siding that's a white color. And so it is not it is maybe 30 to 40% of those elevations. I'm just going off of memory, but it does not, it's not the entirety of the facade.
So this on the board says fascia, eaves, headers, trim side, garage door, which you wouldn't really be seeing.
Correct.
Right, and then siding. Okay, thank you. That was it.
So
Thank you, Mayor.
we have asked a lot of questions. Does the council need any further deliberation before we ask our clerk to read a motion?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I first want to mention that Mike, Luinda, Trevor, Chris, and Jillian, I am very impressed. It's always impressive to me, and it kind of warms my heart when the community gets involved in caring about what happens around their community. And from the first meeting at the Neighborhood Association, I thought the questions coming from the community were fantastic. And, you know, a lot of developments just come through and kind of do their thing, and nobody says anything about it. But you guys have made several, because of your comments, you've made several great improvements to this project. It looks better. They've put up a gate instead of the ballards. I mean, that's impressive right there. And they've enlarged the plants because of you, changed some of the look. I thought that what you've done for the community is fantastic. So first, I just want to commend you on caring enough to make that change. And I'm sure all the neighbors, the hundreds of neighbors that were very interested in this are very appreciative of that as well. So congratulations, and again, thank you for caring about your community. I know when I looked through this, I really tried to dig into each of the items, and I do think our staff did a great job of addressing each one, because again, I'm not an expert at this stuff. And traffic was an initial concern, but after I read and understood, and I think that the applicant has done a good job as far as addressing that. They've provided more parking than they legally need to, so we can't really ding them there at all. I think the result of the project is good, and I'm supportive of it. I do wish we could just get that color piece in. I think that would really make people happy, but I'm telling you, the white on this paper it's not as bright as the paper itself, so that's a relief. So it's not as white as it could be, I guess. And again, I'm not a color expert, so I don't have a strong opinion on this one, so thank you.
Any other comments? No?
I'm just happy that both sides could work together and make a lot of changes that it's going to make an enhanced project.
Okay. Want to read a motion?
Motion is to adopt resolution number 21-307, denying the appeal of the May 13th, 2021 approval by the Planning Commission, adopting the 4 findings of fact, and approving the design review permits subject to the 78 conditions of approval. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haddashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Albert?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you. We have 2 more items. Are we good to keep going, or does anyone need a break?
1 minute, but
Okay, so we'll take a couple minute recess and be back in 3 minutes.
So you get their color board
across that.
Okay, we are back and we will resume our meeting. We will move on to item 9.2, which is the infill parcel, 209 Atkinson Self-Storage Rezone.
Okay, good evening again, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. My second presentation is on the Atkinson Self-Storage Project. The door closed. The site is located at 102 Atkinson Street, and as you said, is identified as parcel 209 in the city's infill area. The site is 5.85 acres, and the majority of the site has a zoning designation of Planned Development 59 or PD 59. The PD 59 zone was created by ordinance in 1978 to allow parking lot use on the site. The site has functioned as a parking lot since that time. There's also a small flag section in the northwest corner of the site that has a zoning designation of R1 for single-family residential. That area of the site is undeveloped. The split zoning condition will be remediated with this project to rezone the entire site to PD 59. The current project proposes the construction of a personal storage facility with RV and boat storage. The applicant requests a rezone to amend the PD 59 zone, as well as rezone the small R1 portion of the property to PD 59. And the PD 59 zone is proposed to be amended to allow personal storage and outdoor boat and RV storage with a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit, as well as a design review permit to evaluate the site plan and elevations, were requested and unanimously approved at the Planning Commission on May 13th. The slide you should have in front of you is just for reference, showing you the site plan and the elevations that go with the conditional use permit and design review permit that were approved, and no modifications to the project were made at the Planning Commission meeting. So when evaluating rezone applications, staff considers whether the findings can be made that the rezone is consistent with the public interest, health, safety, or welfare of the city and is consistent with the general plan. The general plan land use designation on the site is community commercial. If the zoning were community commercial to match the land use, then personal storage would be allowed with a conditional use permit. The proposed storage use requiring a CUP is therefore consistent with the general plan. Furthermore, no unique issues with the project were identified to be inconsistent with public health, safety, or welfare, and staff thus supports the rezone to amend the PD zoning. An initial study and negative declaration were prepared for the project. The site is previously disturbed and no project operations were found to be potentially impactful on the environment. The document was released for a 20-day review period and no comments were received. The applicant communicated with surrounding neighbors early in the process, and a notice of the hearing was sent to property owners and residents within 300 feet. And as with all rezone requests, a sign was posted on the site notifying anyone that drove by about the project information and the contacts. The project was heard by the Planning Commission, as I mentioned, on May 13th. No public comments were received, and the Commission unanimously recommended City Council approve the rezone, and they also approved the conditional use permit and design review permit at the meeting. So in conclusion, change in zoning is compatible with the surrounding area, and the project is consistent with the general plan, zoning ordinance, and community design guidelines, and the required findings can be made for the requested entitlements. So therefore, Planning Commission recommended that the City Council consider the Atkinson Self-Storage negative declaration and adopt the two findings of fact and approve the rezone. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you. Does the council have any questions of staff?
I do. Sean, on one side of the street on Vineyard and actually on Atkinson, there are some businesses there. So will they be gone and all of it will be storage?
No, the south of the property, all those buildings will remain and the businesses will remain that are there.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if it meant the whole.
Yeah, it's only the parking lot undeveloped portion.
Just the parking lot portion. Okay.
Any other questions?
No questions that staff hasn't already answered.
This is the lot that sometimes they use overflow parking for automall cars, yeah, okay, just making sure. All right, I'll open it up to public comment if the council doesn't have anything else. Is there anyone tonight that would like to address this item?
Mayor, we do have the applicant in the audience.
Yeah, do you want to come forward? Good evening.
Hello, good evening. I'm Steve Leffler with M2 Commercial Companies, and we own the adjacent parcel with the 8 buildings as well. And I personally walked through the neighborhood and talked to all the neighbors, and there was no objection. I think they're very happy to get rid of the parking lot because there's some issues with that. And so we're very excited about the project and feel it's going to be really a nice upgrade to the neighborhood and to the city of Roseville.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, and we have 0 phone calls. All right, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Unless there's any other deliberation, I'll ask our clerk to read the motion.
Motion is to consider the Atkinson self-storage negative declaration, adopt 2 findings of fact, and introduce for first reading an ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville amending zoning ordinance number 5428 and number 1429 of the City of Roseville, changing the zoning of certain real property located within the City of Roseville. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haudashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Item 9.3 is another public hearing, the Sierra Vista specific plan. I don't know how you say that. Barbacacia?
Barbaccia.
Okay, development agreement amendment. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. I'm Derek Ogden, Senior Planner with our Planning Division. I have a presentation for you, as you mentioned, on the first amendment to the Barbaccia Development Agreement, which is within the Sierra Vista Specific Plan area. The Barbaccia DA is one of 9 agreements governing the development of the Sierra Vista Specific Plan area. The property is generally located south of Vista Grande Boulevard, east of Westbrook Boulevard, west of the future Upland Drive, and north of Baseline Road. The property is shown in orange on the slide in front of you here. The request tonight before you includes 2 changes to the development agreement. The first change is to incorporate a modified small lot, or RSDS, development standards for the tentative subdivision map, parcel CG20, which was evaluated concurrently with the DA before you this evening. The Planning Commission approved the subdivision map and recommended approval of the development agreement amendment on June 10th of this year. These modifications include provisions such as smaller lot sizes, which will make the CG Properties DA consistent with other recently approved development agreements in the Sierra Vista Specific Plan. The other change to the agreement tonight is to transfer 20 affordable units from parcel CG20 to CG31. In addition to transferring the units, the DAA will also designate the units for 10 low and 10 very low affordable rental units on that CG31 property. This has 2 benefits for the city and also the project. First, by designating the units as low and very low income, the units will be able to meet the city's regional housing needs, or RHNA, numbers. As the council is aware, this has been an area the city is currently working on with the California Department of Housing and Community Development. Second, by placing the affordable units on a high-density site within the CG property, it's more likely these units will actually be built and can serve lower-income residents. So in conclusion, the proposed modifications will update the development standards for the tentative map that was approved by the Planning Commission, as well as update the affordable housing language and requirements. The proposed agreement is consistent with the objectives and policies of our city's general plan, the Sierra Vista Specific Plan, and also the zoning ordinance. The request is in conformance with the public health, safety, and welfare and will not adversely affect orderly development of the properties or the preservation of nearby property values. As I mentioned previously, on June 10th, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended that the City Council consider the 5 findings of fact and introduce for first reading an ordinance approving the first amendment to the Barbaccia Development Agreement. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions of staff?
No questions they haven't already answered.
Great, thank you. I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone this evening that would like to address this item in person?
We are hoping the applicant is calling in.
We do have, we do have one call. You want to bring him through?
That should be the applicant. Okay.
Good evening. You may make your comments now.
Yes, good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Kevin White. I'm the developer of the property. I just want to say thank you for your time this evening. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward request that we're doing, primarily driven by the need to what was, in my opinion, when the specific plan was developed to put affordable housing on single-family homes was prevalent at the time. But in today's world, it makes more sense. So I'm willing. It was actually a very good working with staff on this. By the way, as the previous opponent of the appeal project said, the staff, I just want to let you know that you have one of the most amazing staffs I've ever worked with in my 35 years. Working with staff to move them into my apartment complex, which makes more sense because we already have 8 units in my apartment development, which hopefully you guys will see soon. And it makes a better project to allow us to have some flexibility with that, with adding 20 more units. So that's really it. It's a pretty bland agenda item in front of you, and I appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Are there any other calls? No? Okay. I'll close public comment. Does the council have any other questions?
Not for me.
Okay, we'll close public hearing. And if there's no other deliberations, we'll ask our clerk to please read a motion.
Motion is to consider 5 findings of fact and introduce for first reading ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville approving the First Amendment to the Cyril G. Barbaccia Irrevocable Trust Development Agreement relative to the Sierra Vista Specific Plan. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So Vice Mayor Haldeshelt? Yes. Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this will be the last public comment of the evening. This is a time when anyone can call in on any item that is not on the agenda. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to make a public comment? No, and we do not have any phone calls. So I'll close public comment, and we'll start with staff to see if we have any comments, and then end up with council reports.
For the reports, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rakucci, anything tonight?
Just a couple things. I went to, I keep saying I zoomed to my NACWA meeting, my Northern California Water Association meeting. And a lot of our discussion was what are we doing here during our drought, and also anticipation if we have a drought next year. And so making some positive plans on options and how we work together. And then tomorrow we'll be doing South Placer Wastewater Authority, and that's working with our landfill and seeing in the coming months we're going to be looking for another organization that would be helping run the landfill, but we're going through the process of choosing someone, so that's what's happening. But on top of that, all of us, I think, received a phone call. It's fire season, and we have 3 of our firefighters are sent to Plumas National Forest east of Portola on Highway 70, and they have a mandatory evacuation. And it's supposed to be at the Beckworth complex. I don't know what that means, but it's in that area, but they have mandatory evacuations. The irony is I text my son to say, oh, we sent 3 firefighters, and he says, I know I'm there. So, it's happening all over, and I hope safety for everyone, and also that fire and others, we can contain them quickly and save lives and save property.
I had a couple updates. One of my council assignments is RPAL, Roseville Police Activities League, and we met yesterday. And I just wanted to let everybody know that if you are looking to participate in some of RPAL's summer programs, I know they're always popular. There is still some availability on some of the programs. We were talking about them yesterday, so I would encourage you to go to the website, take a look at what they have and what programs are available for the summer, and get signed up if you haven't already. They're great programs. They always seem to fill up quickly, and they are starting to fill up, so I just wanted to put that on people's radar. And also, I know the 4th of July has come and gone, but one of my other council responsibilities is Arcona, and I want to just personally thank everybody in the community that came out to support their fireworks booth. From what I've heard and people I've talked to, it was largely successful, and that was very encouraging to hear because they do depend on public support and neighborhood involvement, and it was nice to see that everybody came out. And then lastly, I had the, I don't want to say honor, I was excited to be atop of one of the fire truck in the 4th of July parade, along with all of my other council members that are up here. That I had never done that before, so that was a bucket list item for me. That was really cool. Just great experience. But aside from that experience, personally for me, I just thought it was really, really great to see so many people come out. I actually think it might have been one of the largest crowds I've seen in all the years I've been going to it. Or maybe it just looked like everybody was bigger because I was sitting on top of a ladder. Everybody just looked more spread out, but I actually think it was a lot more people than we've had in years past. So it was great to see people coming out and kind of embracing that, getting back to normal. And it was just nice to have that event and have the city do that with so many other things in surrounding cities not coming back online. So I think that's a testament to our city and our forward planning and how much we really do try to incorporate the input from our residents and try to focus on that quality of life aspect. It's not just a tagline for all of us up here. We do take it seriously, and it's nice to see that the people come out and embrace the things and the events that we do. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Howdeshout?
Yeah, Pauline, we're at Regional Water Authority tomorrow too, aren't we?
Yep.
Okay. And then today, the mayors of Roseville, maybe I'm taking this from you.
Go for it.
The Water Forum and the mayors of the region encouraged everyone to double down on conservation. We had, I work for the Northern California Water Association, so Carla Nemeth, the director of Water Resources at the state, was our guest speaker, and you can just hear in her voice and the voice of many people who are multi-generational farmers in the valley, that this year is a unique year with a unique set of challenges. As we often do, we have a lot of cool things on our consent calendar. One of them had to deal with a soccer field. One of them had to do with a proclamation. July is Parks and Rec Month, and I think it's great that we have 79 parks and 12 more under construction, and that we're already meeting the Trust for Public Lands goal of ensuring that there is a park within a 10-minute walk from every home. 84% of Roseville residents live within a 10-minute walk of a park. So enjoy them.
Yep.
Find some shade, though. It's going to be really hot.
Councilmember Alvord?
The heat wave is coming. I got a vacation, and my wife and I got out of the state for a little while and visited some family. Came back and got to enjoy the parade. And I agree, Tracy. I think that it was just a very heartwarming to watch the community come out. Saw people hugging each other, and it was really nice. And I took a couple grandkids to the fairgrounds that night, and we watched an awesome fireworks show, a couple of them. There was a golf course in the background that went first, and then the fairgrounds went, and it was just a great show. Appreciate the city being behind that as well. I don't have any big announcements as far as any of the commission things go, but be safe out there. I keep thinking the pandemic's just about over, but then we just had a good friend of our family. They took her off life support this weekend, and she passed away from COVID. So it's not gone yet. It's still out there, but that's it.
Thank you. Just a few things I'll share briefly. I want to congratulate those that we appointed this evening to our boards and commissions, and we had a lot of people to choose from, so that is really great. If you were not appointed, I would just say, keep at it, because there's lots of opportunities in the future. A tentative date has been set for September 30th for the State of the City. That is being planned for West Park High School and getting some of the students involved. So details are still forthcoming in the planning stages, but the city will be partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, and that will hopefully earn some funds that would go back to the high school and the high school students potentially. The Placer Fair, Councilmember Alvord mentioned this, but I had heard that preliminary numbers were that there was the 3 times the amount of attendance than 2019, which is kind of felt like that was the same for the parade. So a lot of people there. I had no money left that weekend because my kids went 2 days, and they had a blast, but my goodness. I don't think there was anything there they didn't get. Also that same weekend, I represented the council at the service for our first female mayor, June Wanish. As you remember, we gave her her family a resolution or just acknowledgement of her service, and I presented that on the council's behalf, and that was really well received. It was really a kind service, and that's what everybody said about June, how kind she was. I wanted to congratulate Pauline and Richard Ricucci on their park opening. We had that maybe a week and a half ago, and Pauline's park was named in 2017 before she and I were serving together on the council. It was finished about a year and a half ago, and because of COVID, they could not have the opening that they wanted to have. So the opening there, both of you were there. There were snacks, there was staff, there was kind of the development team. Our city manager was there, and so it was really nice. And we will have the next park opening for the John L. Sullivan Park July 17th, if folks can make it out at 10 a.m. And lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge the Placer Eats. If you haven't heard about it, it's a great excuse to go out and eat. 4 weeks, 4 different cities in South Placer. As I'm really hungry right now too. The idea is that this week to support our Roseville restaurants and the workers and owners there, moving to Rockland the week of July 12th. July 19th, the city of Lincoln, and the 26th in Loomis. It's headed up through Placer Eats, and all the chambers, so it's a great excuse to get out. And I don't have anything else unless the council does. I suggest that we adjourn, and we will meet back here July 21st at 6 p.m., and we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.
I'm hungry too.
Yeah.